The bus rattled along the narrow city streets, its windows fogged from the damp morning air. The smell of gasoline mixed with wet clothes and yesterday's newspapers. It was the kind of bus ride most people endured in silence, heads bowed, eyes fixed on their phones or the floor. Among the passengers sat Maya Lopez, a 23-year-old college student with weary eyes that told stories beyond her years. Her coat, patched in several places, barely held back the autumn chill. The soles of her shoes had begun to thin, but she wore them proudly, because they were hers, and she had bought them with her own earnings. Maya had learned early that life rarely offered handouts. Her father had abandoned the family when she was 9, leaving her mother to work day and night as a laundress. Now, with her mother's health failing, Maya bore much of the burden herself: 2 part-time jobs, night shifts at a diner, tutoring sessions squeezed between classes. Every dollar mattered, every hour of sleep was precious. Yet despite the hardships, Maya held on to her dreams: to graduate, to find stable work, and to pull her family out of poverty. The bus stopped with a lurch, and a man climbed aboard. He didn't look like anyone remarkable. His jacket was faded, his jeans frayed at the hems, and his boots were scuffed and heavy with mud. His hair was slightly unkempt, his beard rough. Passengers glanced at him briefly, then looked away. To most, he appeared to be just another weary laborer, perhaps even homeless. But Maya noticed something different. His shoulders carried themselves with quiet strength, and though his clothes were worn, his eyes were sharp, watchful, as though they belonged to someone who had seen much of the world. The bus was crowded, and there were no empty seats. The man stood near her, gripping the metal pole. Without hesitation, Maya rose. "Sir, please," she said softly. "You can take my seat." The man blinked, almost as though he hadn't expected kindness. "Are you sure? You look tired yourself." "I'm fine," Maya replied with a small smile. "You should sit." For a moment, their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition, perhaps, or gratitude deeper than the words themselves. Slowly, the man sat down. "Thank you," he said, his voice low, carrying a weight she couldn't quite place. Maya simply nodded and clutched the overhead rail as the bus jolted forward. For the rest of the ride, the man sat silently, occasionally glancing up at her. Finally, as the bus neared the city center, he asked, "What's your name?" "Maya." He repeated it quietly, as if committing it to memory. "Maya, that's a beautiful name." She gave a polite smile, not knowing what else to say. Soon, the bus reached her stop. She stepped off quickly, rushing through the drizzle toward the diner where her morning shift awaited. She did not see the man watching her from the window until she disappeared into the gray crowd. What Maya did not and could not know was that the man she had offered her seat to was not poor at all. His name was Alexander Grant, CEO of Grant Holdings, a global investment conglomerate, and one of the wealthiest men in the city. He had built an empire from the ground up, and though his face was often splashed across financial magazines, few recognized him when he stripped away the tailored suits and polished cars. Lately, Alexander had grown restless. Wealth had insulated him, surrounded him with people who bowed, smiled, and agreed with everything he said. But he craved authenticity. He wanted to know how people truly lived, to see the world without the filter of privilege. So he occasionally disguised himself, dressing in old clothes and blending in with the city's working class. That morning, he had not expected much, perhaps a quiet ride, a glimpse of ordinary life. But then came Maya, a girl with nothing to spare who had given up her seat without hesitation. Alexander thought about her all day. Her tired but kind eyes. The quiet dignity with which she carried herself. The way she had spoken to him as if he mattered, even when he looked like no one at all. That night, while she studied in her dimly lit apartment, Alexander sat in his office at the top of a glass skyscraper, her name echoing in his thoughts. Maya. He had seen countless faces bow before his wealth, but kindness like hers, unprompted, uncalculated, was rare. And he had decided he would not let it slip away unnoticed. The next morning, Maya was preparing for another long day when she heard a knock at her door. She opened it to find a man in a crisp black suit standing beside a sleek, black sedan. "Miss Maya Lopez?" he asked politely. "Yes," she replied, cautious. "I've been sent to pick you up," he said, handing her an envelope. Confused, Maya opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. "Kindness is a rare jewel. Yesterday, you gave it freely. Today, let it be returned. Please allow my driver to bring you to me." A friend. Maya's first instinct was suspicion. She had no rich friends. Who would send such a message? But something about the neat handwriting, the respectful tone, and the black car waiting patiently drew her curiosity. Against her better judgment, she agreed. The car glided smoothly through the city, carrying her far from the crowded neighborhoods she knew into a district of towering buildings and manicured streets. Finally, they stopped before a glittering skyscraper whose name she recognized immediately, Grant Holdings. Her heart raced. What business could she possibly have here? The driver led her to the top floor, where tall glass doors opened into an office larger than her entire apartment. Behind the mahogany desk stood the man from the bus, only now, he wore a tailored suit, his beard neatly trimmed, his hair brushed back. Maya froze, her breath catching. "It's you." Alexander smiled gently. "Yes, my name is Alexander Grant." The name hit her like a wave. She had read about him in newspapers, heard his name spoken with awe. A billionaire, a man so far removed from her world that he might as well have been from another planet. "I don't understand," she stammered. "You gave up your seat for me," Alexander said simply. "You saw me as a person, not as a burden. You didn't know who I was, and yet you showed kindness. Do you know how rare that is?" Maya shook her head, still in disbelief. "It was nothing. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Alexander said firmly. "Not anyone. Most people looked past me. You didn't. That matters." He walked closer, his eyes steady on hers. "I want to help you, Maya. Tell me, what do you dream of?" She hesitated. Part of her wanted to protest, to say she needed nothing. But the truth pressed against her lips, unspoken for years. "I want to finish school. To give my mom a better life. To not struggle every day just to survive." Alexander nodded, as though he had expected nothing less. "Then let me help. A scholarship, medical care for your mother. Opportunities for the future. You don't owe me anything, this is simply my way of repaying what you gave me yesterday, hope." Tears filled Maya's eyes. "Why me?" "Because you reminded me of something I had forgotten," Alexander said softly. "That kindness, even the smallest gesture, is worth more than all the wealth in the world." From that day forward, Maya's life began to change. A scholarship covered her tuition. Her mother received the treatments she desperately needed. And while Maya's days were still filled with hard work, the crushing weight of hopelessness lifted. Yet perhaps the greater change was within Alexander himself. For all his billions, it was Maya's small act of kindness that had awakened him to the truth, that real wealth was not measured in money, but in humanity. And so, a billionaire who had ridden the bus in old clothes found himself forever bound to the memory of a poor girl's selfless gesture, one that cost her nothing, yet gave him everything. The city bus rattled down Main Street, its windows fogged with breath from dozens of weary passengers pressed together. It was barely 7 a.m., but the vehicle already smelled of damp coats and tired silence. Among the crowd sat Maya Lopez, a 23-year-old college student juggling 2 part-time jobs. Her clothes were plain and patched, her coat several winters old, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. Maya had grown up in hardship. Her father had abandoned the family when she was 9, and her mother, now struggling with chronic illness, worked as a laundress until her health forced her to stop. Every bill, every rent notice, every grocery receipt weighed on Maya's shoulders. Still, she dreamed of a brighter future, graduating from college, getting a steady job, and giving her mother the comfort she had never known. The bus screeched to a halt. A man stepped on. He was tall, with weathered boots and a faded jacket whose elbows had been patched more than once. His beard was uneven, his hair slightly unkempt. To most passengers, he looked like just another poor laborer, perhaps even homeless. No one shifted to make room. But Maya noticed the tired way he clutched the metal pole, and without hesitation, she rose. "Sir, you can take my seat," she offered, giving him a small smile. The man looked surprised, almost caught off guard. "Are you sure? You look tired yourself." "I'm fine," Maya replied gently. "Please, sit." Slowly, he sat down, giving her a quiet nod. "Thank you. Most people don't notice someone like me." Maya chuckled softly. Everyone deserves a little kindness. Their eyes met for a moment. His gaze was sharp, thoughtful, unlike the weary stare of a man beaten down by life. But she didn't dwell on it. She simply clung to the overhead rail as the bus groaned along. After a long pause, the man asked, "What's your name?" "Maya." He repeated it, as though tucking it away. "Maya. That's a beautiful name." Soon, The bus pulled up to her stop. Maya hurried off toward the diner where she worked the breakfast shift, not noticing the man's eyes following her until she disappeared into the drizzle. What she didn't know was that he was not the poor man he appeared to be. His name was Alexander Grant, a billionaire and the CEO of Grant Holdings, a global investment firm. Tired of endless board meetings and people treating him like a title instead of a man, Alexander sometimes disguised himself in worn clothes and rode public buses to feel ordinary again. That morning, he had expected nothing unusual. Instead, he found something priceless: kindness freely given, without expectation. As he sat in the seat she had surrendered, Alexander felt a pang he hadn't known in years, a reminder of humanity. By the time he returned to his office in the tallest skyscraper downtown, Maya's tired smile lingered in his thoughts. That night, while Maya bent over her textbooks in her dim apartment, Alexander made a decision. He would not let this kindness go unanswered. Part 2. The Revelation. The following morning, Maya was buttoning her worn coat when a knock sounded at the door of her tiny apartment. She opened it cautiously. Outside stood a man in a sharp black suit beside a sleek, black sedan. "Miss Maya Lopez?" he asked politely. "Yes, I've been sent to pick you up," he said, handing her an envelope. Puzzled, Maya opened it. Inside was a note, written in elegant script. "Kindness is a rare jewel. Yesterday, you gave it freely. Today, allow it to be returned. Please come with my driver." A friend. Her first thought was suspicion. She had no wealthy friends, no reason for such a gesture. But the note felt genuine, and curiosity tugged stronger than doubt. Reluctantly, she stepped into the car. The sedan glided smoothly through the city, carrying her far from the worn streets she knew into the glass and marble district where skyscrapers sparkled like giants. Finally, they stopped before a towering building whose name gleamed in gold: Grant Holdings. Maya's heart pounded. Why here? The driver guided her to the top floor. She stepped into a vast office lined with windows that overlooked the city. At the far end stood the man from the bus, but no longer in rags. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his beard neatly trimmed, his hair styled. Maya froze. "It's you." He smiled warmly. "Yes, my name is Alexander Grant." Her breath caught. The name was legendary. His face was often in financial news, though she had never connected it to the tired man on the bus. "I don't understand," she whispered. Alexander walked closer. "You didn't know who I was. You saw a tired stranger and gave him your seat. Do you know how rare that is? In my world, people only see money. They flatter, they scheme, they want something. But you gave without expecting anything." Maya shook her head, overwhelmed. "It was just a seat. Nothing special." "On the contrary," Alexander said softly. "It was everything. You reminded me of something I had forgotten, that kindness is the greatest wealth of all." Her eyes glistened, but she stayed silent. "I want to help you," he continued. "Tell me, Maya, what is it you dream of?" She hesitated, her throat tight. At last, the truth slipped out. "I want to finish college. To give my mother a better life. To stop struggling every day." Alexander nodded, as though her words were exactly what he had hoped to hear. "Then allow me to help. A scholarship, medical care for your mother, opportunities for your future. You owe me nothing. This is simply my way of honoring the kindness you gave me." Maya's tears spilled freely. "Why me?" "Because you saw me when no one else did," he said simply. "And that has changed me." In the weeks that followed, Maya's world began to shift. Her tuition was paid in full. Her mother received the medical treatments she desperately needed. For the first time in years, Maya studied without the crushing fear of failure. But more than money, what grew between her and Alexander was trust. He visited often, sometimes in his fine suits, sometimes again in his worn jacket, as though to remind her he was both man and mogul. They shared coffee, laughter, and long conversations about dreams and regrets. For Alexander, Maya had reopened a door he thought long closed, the simple joy of being seen for who he was, not for what he owned. For Maya, Alexander was proof that even in a world divided by wealth and poverty, kindness could build unexpected bridges. And so, a billionaire who had once ridden the bus in old clothes and a poor girl who gave up her seat found themselves bound together, not by wealth, but by humanity.